In this video, we will show you 4 executions for men whose crimes led them to the gallows in 1945. But what if we told you there were 5? One man's execution has been lost to time. No film, no photograph, no public record of his final moment. We couldn't find it. Now, let's take a look at the full story behind this case. On August 26, 1944, a US B-24 bomber was shot down over Germany. 8 American airmen parachuted out and were soon captured by German forces. The men were taken into custody and marched through the town of Rüsselsheim on their way to a prisoner of war facility. They were under military escort and were not resisting arrest in any way. However, the town of Rüsselsheim had recently suffered heavy Allied bombing, and many civilians had lost their homes or loved ones. Tensions were high, and emotions were unstable. As the American prisoners were led through the town, a group of civilians gathered. At first, there were only insults and shouts. But quickly, the mood of the crowd turned violent. People began throwing stones and bricks. Then metal tools and wooden sticks were used. The prisoners, already wounded and outnumbered, had no chance to defend themselves. 6 of the 8 American airmen were killed in the street by the mob. The remaining 2 survived the assault, severely injured, and were able to provide eyewitness testimony about what had occurred. Their statements would later become key pieces of evidence in a war crimes investigation. After Germany's surrender in 1945, the United States military began investigating the attack. Dozens of townspeople were questioned, but 5 men were identified as the main perpetrators. These individuals were accused of initiating and participating in the violence. The accused were Johannes Opper, Josef Hartgen, Philipp Gütlich, Friedrich Wust, and Johannes Opper. They were not soldiers or members of the SS. They were civilians, men from the local community who had decided to act on anger and hate. The 5 men were arrested and charged with war crimes under international law. Their case was heard by a U.S. military tribunal. During the trial, evidence was presented showing that these men had directly attacked the American airmen, and in some cases encouraged others in the crowd to join the assault. Their guilt was confirmed by multiple witnesses, including the surviving American soldiers. The tribunal found all 5 men guilty. The verdict was clear. They had committed unlawful killings of prisoners of war. As a result, each of them was sentenced to death by hanging. The executions were scheduled to take place at Bruchsal Prison in November 1945. On November 10, 1945, the 5 men were hanged one after another. Their executions were filmed by U.S. military personnel for historical documentation. The Rüsselsheim case continues to be cited in legal discussions about wartime accountability and civilian involvement in war crimes. What they did was brutal and unlawful, but they were not trained killers or ideological leaders. They were ordinary people in extraordinary times. Do you believe these 5 men truly deserve the death penalty for what they did?